Here's the control room floor. I've got masked off for painting around the nav chart table, periscope pedestal, and control stations. And the way this works is you've got these bulkheads which have your instruments in them, and they go around and they kind of lock in and hold each other in place. Now I went with, for this gray here, it calls for light gold gray, which is a U.S. Navy aircraft color from the 60s, 70s, and I felt that it was just kind of provisional, so I just grabbed some surface primer and blasted it, and that's close enough. This is actually light gold gray right here, so you just need a light gray. I need to gloss this, and once I do, then I'll be able to put on these decals that I talked about before. And they are a tiny bit fuzzy, but they'll be fine. They'll be fine. Here's the control room floor, and you notice it looks kind of weird, and that's because I hand brushed a coat of Future on it. And the reason I did that was because I knew that I was going to come back and paint these areas here with enamel paints, and you always have touch-up work to do when you paint, so I knew that it would be easier to touch up paint and remove paint from an acrylic undercoat than to try to remove it when it's sitting solvent paint sitting on top of solvent paint. I can use a little bit of thinner and clean up some touch-up areas, and I'm not going to worry about damaging the paint underneath it. But at the end of the day, what's going to happen here is it's all going to be flatted out, and it'll all blend in, and everything will look fine. Alright. So let's talk a little bit about brush painting. And you can't really brush an area larger than about a square inch or so, or else you're going to get brush strokes. What you have to have is open time, and there's a amount of time from when you start applying paint to when it starts to dry, and that's how much time you have to work. And usually larger pieces, by that I mean larger than these seats I'm doing here, will require a couple of coats. You have to work fast, and then come back for the second coat and also work fast. So you want this to lay down before it starts to dry and show you brush strokes. Now these little seats on the Seaview are actually gray with sort of reddish orange cushions, so I'm putting the gray on now. And one of the keys to brush painting is to use thin paint. So your paint should be not quite as thin as you'd use on an airbrush, but way thinner than what you typically find when you first open the bottle. So you want it to flow so where you can move fast, and then get your brush off the paint before it starts to set up. So kind of look like what I'm doing here. You notice I'm not on any part of the paint job more than a second or two. And if you do it like this, you can do hand brushing no problem over relatively small areas. Again, when I say relatively small, I mean maybe an area about yay big, like you could do the inside of a 1/72 scale cockpit on an aircraft, but that's about it. I wouldn't try it on a 1/48 scale aircraft. I think I would spray that, but I'd paint out 1/72 scale cockpits by hand all the time, quite successfully, just because I've developed some technique here. And you can do this too. Another thing is a lot of people like to leave small parts on the tree, the sprue tree, while painting them, because they think, oh, that way I don't have to handle them. Well, I recommend against doing that, and the reason why is because even your smallest parts are going to have molding seam lines, and you're either going to have to touch those up, okay, take them off and touch those up, clean them up, or go ahead and do it now. Get the part off the tree, clean it up so it's nice like it's supposed to be, and then attach it to a little something like this to hold it. And to me, that's a little bit better solution. At least I've found it to be. The danger in doing this, however, is you got to know what the part is. If you're looking for the number next to the part, then you have to kind of have that in your head before you start taking it apart. So always allow at least 24 hours for anything to dry before you go back and try to paint over it. So tomorrow I will come along and get out my orange and paint these seat cushions. Here are the bulkheads from the Radio Shack in the aft part of the control room. Now, the decals from TSDS tell you to discard this piece and replace it with two pieces cut from sheet styrene, based upon a template they provide, which is exactly the shape of these two pieces, with the exception of these things right here. In the TSDS decal sheet, these things get in the way. Now, I don't know why. I don't know whether it's because these are from the movie or whether these are from the TV show, either or, but the way that TSDS has decided to engineer their sheet, these get in the way. Now, I wasn't about to fabricate this. I chose instead to just kind of cut the decal sheet apart and kind of fill in the blanks, so to speak. That's good enough for me, especially for a part that sits in the very, very back of the control room. You're probably not going to even see it. So that was my solution. You can do what you want. Now, had I sanded down all these other pieces and all this other relief and had the decals all laying flat, then maybe I would have done it there too. But didn't know about that when I started out. So that's that. Now the other thing here is this. This is the top of the navigation table, and the navigation table actually looks like this. So without telling you this, of course, there's no way that this is going to fit on top of this table without sanding all this stuff off, all this relief off. But it would look quite nice if you did sand all this off. And in fact, the Paragraphics photo etch kit gives you a replacement navigator plotting arm, and so that combined with this decal would make it look quite nice. But quite frankly, I just don't have time to do that. I'm kind of up against a deadline for a show coming up, and I didn't know about it really in advance. So we're just going to discard this decal sheet, and we're going to go with just a simple paper looking plot. That's why I painted it white. Needs a couple more little coats in here, and then I'll paint the outskirts of this kind of brown to represent wood, and that'll be good enough. But had I had this to do over again, then I would probably have sanded down all this relief. If I knew these decals weren't going to adhere, I would have sanded down all this relief and sanded down the top of that chart table and applied this decal and the aftermarket brass plotting arm. Okay, there you go.